Hey everybody, welcome back to Shop 209. I'm John. This is Project FrankenNova. So last year I decided to make a quick video of changing the front end of this 74 Nova to the 68-72 body style. And after I did that, I wanted to put the whole car together with parts I had just laying around the house. I've got a bunch of parts cars, a bunch of parts, all kinds of stuff laying around, and I wanted to throw it all together, put a car together, and I wanted it to run 12s. Because I thought I had enough high performance parts to make that happen. Well, this thing got out of hand really fast. So I thought I was going to use a bunch of used parts I had laying around, but as I started putting everything together, I found some problems with the pistons and rods I was originally going to use. I had another set of pistons, I had to buy rods. I put that short block together, then I found a problem with the heads, so then I bought new heads. Well, I didn't want to put the crappy old intake I had that I was going to use, a 1970s Edelbrock Torker. I didn't want to put that on a set of Brodix heads, so I bought a new intake. Well, now the new intake was too tall, I had to buy a new hood. The flat hood wouldn't fit with the carburetor height and the air cleaner on it. So this thing has spiraled out of control, but it's not a whole bunch of used parts anymore. Some of it is, but it's turning out to be a pretty cool car. Anyway, the body is pretty much untouched other than putting it back together. The only thing new is the hood and the deck lid. And the deck lid's one I bought 10 or 15 years ago and I never used because the lock hole was punched wrong. So I used the original one when I painted my 73. Now I have got a few things done since my last video. I got the front end of the car put together. I got the valve covers changed because the brake booster was hitting those. And I got the shifter and the seat mounted. That's about it. Now there's a lot left to do to the car. I've got to finish wiring the front park lamps, turn signals. I've got to wire the rear side marker lights and the rear tail lights. I've got to put the rear bumper on, and then I've got to put the roll cage in it. I've got a 10-point cage from Rhodes Race Cars, and we're going to put that in. I've got to get the gauges mounted, and this piece of a dashboard is going to go back in. I'm going to mount the gauges on that. So now that I'm through with a bunch of projects that I had at work that's kept me out of the shop for about a month, it's time to get back to work on this thing. And one of the first things I'm going to do is mount the rear bumper. Now Mitch Drops had sent me a question asking about how I mounted the rear bumper. When I did the conversion, I know, Mitch, that you filled in your panel. You didn't do what I did here, but I'm not sure, but you kind of described it to me. I think I know what you did. Anyway, this panel is pretty much the same other than the fact I notched it here for the gas tank neck. The shock mounts here, I'm using these two holes for the bumper mount, and then I drilled two new ones out here. Same thing on this side, and those line up with the factory bumper brackets. Now, that may not be exact, but I made them work. You can try that, or you can, cut this little area out and weld your plate over there, or bolt your plate in and kind of use it as a washer and use the backside. There's a couple of different ways you can do it, but the way I'm doing it is using these two holes, and then I drill me two new holes on the outside. Anyway, let's get this bumper mounted. Okay, so this factory bumper I'm using has been sitting around for a long time, and it's got a type of a nutsert or something in the bumper bracket that the bolts go into, and this one's gone, this one's stripped out. I'm going to leave this one alone and just use 3 bolts because it's my car, and if 3 won't hold it, then I got a bigger problem than that 1 bolt. Anyway, I'm going to drill out this hole so I can put my 3/8 rib nut in there, and I'm going to use my almost favorite tool, might be my favorite tool in the whole shop, my rib nut tool. I'm going to pop that in there, repair that hole, and then I'll have 3 on that side and 3 on this side because one of those is messed up too. There we go. I didn't get it all the first time. Now I can bolt this thing in and cuss the whole time I'm doing it, because it's kind of aggravating by yourself to hold it up, and to get the bolt started. But I'm a big boy. I can handle it. Maybe. Okay, so last night I finished getting the bumper on. I've got my tail lights bolted in, and I got my deck lid put on. Now, it's mostly lined up. It closes. It needs some adjusting here and there, but it's okay. Now, I told Mitch Drops had asked me about mounting the bumper and the holes I drilled. Earlier in this video, I told you wrong. The two holes I drilled on the outside for the stock brackets, those are the ones I'm using to mount the bumper. I'm not using any of the factory holes. It's been a long time since I made the conversion, almost a year, and I forgot. So, my bad. Anyway, I'm using the outside. I'm using two bolts on each side. It's plenty sturdy, doesn't really move any. So that's good enough for me, but maybe not for you. You could always build some kind of offset bracket for the bumper. Okay, so the next thing I got to do is, before I drive it, I've got to put some fluid in the rear end. When I built the rear end, it holds right at 2 quarts. And when I built it, I put 1 quart of fluid in there before I closed it up, and I need to add another one before I drive it. While I'm doing that, to make it easier to get to the fill tube or the fill hole on the rear end, I'm going to take this wheel and tire off. And while I'm there, I'm also going to roll this fender lip, because it's pretty much touching the tire. If there's any movement at all, it scrubs the tire. Now, these are 4.5 back spacing. 5.5 was too much because the wheel hit the inside of the body. Well, they don't make this wheel with 5-inch back spacing, which is the perfect back spacing to run a 275/60, which is what this is. Now, a lot of guys will tell you 5.5-inch back spacing is the size that you need to do that, but that's not always true. All these cars are different. Each same year model, it doesn't matter. I've owned a bunch of these cars, and all of them are offset to the passenger side like this one is. I've got way more clearance on the driver's side, but all of these cars are a little bit different. On my 73 over there, I've got 5-inch back spacing weld wheels on there, and I've got plenty of room inside and out. Even though this side has been rolled on that car, but I still have room. And plenty on the inside. The shock, which I moved on this car, on that car, they're in the stock location, and I don't have any issues. So now I'm going to pull this wheel and tire off. I'm going to roll the fender lip. I'm going to add some fluid to the rear end. Then I got a few more things to do, and then we can drive this thing. Okay, so I jacked it up a little farther, put some jack stands under it. Now I'm going to let the jack down. The rear end will come down. I can get the tire out. All right, did let it down far enough. There we go. Okay, it's been a long time since I've done this, but they make tools that hook to your wheel and you roll it and all that. Typically what I do is, this quarter panel is going to get changed eventually anyway, and the outer wheelhouse is probably also going to get changed, but you have to be careful doing it. I don't really suggest doing it this way unless you've done it this way before, you know what you're doing, but I just use a hammer. Okay, I'll check the tire clearance in just a minute. Your plug on the side of the 8.5 inch rear end is right here. A 3/8 extension will go into it. And then if it's not terribly tight, which that one apparently is, you can take it with a ratchet. I'm gonna have to use an impact probably. All right, so you want to take it out. All right. And then you want to fill it up to the edge of that hole. To the edge of the hole right here. So I'm going to get my rear fluid, my rear gear oil, and fill that up. Now if you can't get to where you can get the bottle in there all the way, you can put a piece of hose on the end of it and put it in the hole and do it that way, which is usually how I do it. This will probably not get me very far going sideways. So yeah, too hard to do. Okay, so now I have a 3/8 hose attached to it that'll fit in the rear end hole. If I can get it in there. Okay, and now I can turn the bottle up like this and put it in. Just make sure the hose doesn't come off the bottle or you'll have trouble. Now another trick I like to use, it didn't quite overflow. I got it all in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take an Allen wrench, stick it in there, turn it down, keep this part against the hole, make sure I don't tilt it up, and then I can pull it back out. That'll tell me how much is on there. So I want to take this, put it in, point it straight down, pull it right back out, and that tells me that I'm most of the way up. So I'm within a 1/4 inch of that. And that's good enough for right now. I'll check it again when I get it on a lift before I go to the track. Now I'm going to jack it back up from the rear end and see how much clearance we got. Probably not enough still. Okay, so I ended up with about a 1/4 inch clearance, which is not enough, but it's good enough to drive the car. You know, it's not touching now, and if the tire grows, you know, then it's probably gonna rub a little bit. But like I said, it's okay at the moment for driving it. I'm not gonna keep these tires on there. These are old BF Goodrich radial drag radials, and I'm gonna put some Mickey Thompsons back on, so the profile may be different. I may be in better shape with the other tires. I may be in worse shape. Especially when we get down to 15 pounds or whatever I end up running in them. Anyway, that's good enough for this. Now, a couple more things we got to do. Okay, this car has power steering gearbox on it. At the moment, I'm not going to put the power steering pump back on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my high pressure hose and my return hose. I'm going to loop them together and bolt them in here. That way it makes it a little bit easier to steer than without anything at all on it, and also it keeps the fluid in there from squirting out or getting anywhere. So the 69 car that I'm building, and that car is still on the you know, it's still getting worked on, just haven't had a lot of time lately. So anyway, I'm going to loop that 69 car is done like that, and it steers okay. So I'm going to try that with this, and we'll see how it does when I drive it. Okay, so I've cut both ends of my old power steering hoses about that short, and then I'm going to loop them together with a piece of 3/8 tubing or 3/8 hose, clamp it on there real good, and that should be good enough. Okay, so that's done, and that is how it looks. So I've already tested it, moved the steering wheel back and forth, and it didn't leak anything. So that'll at least keep me from puking transmission fluid all over the floor or all over the car when I turn the wheel, until I figure out what I'm going to do about a new gearbox that's manual, or I'll put power steering on it. The next thing I have to do is put my park signals and turn signals in the front bumper. Now these are some crusty ones I had laying around that were actually in another bumper that's all been up. And I took them apart, got the screws out of them barely. I've got some new screws to put in them, had to fix one hole. And I'm going to mount these in there, get them wired up to my new harness, get the headlights wired up, get my side marker lights wired up, and then we can wire up the tail lights. Now, this is an 1157 bulb. It's got two filaments in it. I don't know which one is the bright one for the turn signal, but I've got a wiring diagram right here somewhere. I could probably look at it, but I'm too lazy for that. So I'll just wire it up and then switch it if it's not the right one. You've got one for each filament, and then the housing grounds itself. Now, hopefully, with as rusty as it is, it'll ground itself. Let's get it installed. Okay, I got those mounted in. They look really good. And no, I didn't wash them. I haven't washed anything on this car. The hood kind of looks funny because it's the cleanest thing on the car. But, I mean, I did wipe some of the leaves and stuff off the bumpers before I put them on. But, you know, I'm trying to do this with as much stuff as I've got laying around, no matter the condition. My side marker lights are pretty faded, and I'll eventually get new ones. But for now, like I said, I'm just trying to throw it together to get it functional, get it running and driving with, you know, all the stuff I need to drive it on the street. Let's wire these up. Okay, I've got my headlights, I've got my park lamps, I've got my side markers, I've got all those wired up. Now there's no bulbs in the side markers. I don't have a headlight switch installed yet. I don't have the tail lights wired up yet, but I've got all the wiring out of the way so I can at least drive the car and don't have to worry about anything dangling. I ran the wires up under here, and I've got to put some more I use a little sticker, a little adhesive that holds a tie strap, a little zip tie. So I've got a few of those up in here. It's holding most of it up out of the way. Put everything in with butt splices, and all I've got to do now to drive the car is make sure all my front end parts are bolted together completely, and kind of set the toe in a little bit so it's not going to be extremely wonky while I'm trying to drive it. I'm not going to go far. I might, you know, go down to the next street, turn around and come back, bring it down the driveway, and we're going to get it on film. So we'll see how this thing does. I have not moved it under its own power yet. I've had it jacked up. I've let the gears warm up with the tires rolling, and then you make sure the brakes would stop the wheels, put it back in park, shut it off. Haven't touched it since. So it has not moved under its own power, but it's fixing to. Okay, it's time to hook the battery up. Make sure nothing smokes after all the wiring I've done, which none of those fuses are in just because it's not ready to work. But still, you want to pay attention. Oh, I got the key on. Maybe that'll help. Fan tried to come on. Something was pulling a bunch of power. All right. And I plan on relocating the battery to the trunk, so this is temporary. And I do have the battery clamped down like it's supposed to be with a factory clamp. Now, I'm going to crank it up, put it in gear. A couple of things. I hope it idles. I kind of tuned it a little bit, not much. And also I now have the vacuum hooked up for the booster, which with this cam I'm not going to have a lot of vacuum, but hopefully it's enough to assist the brakes. So let's see if it'll go into gear and stop. Hell, let's just hope it cranks up and idles. All right. So it's running pig rich. I'm gonna have to adjust that. See if I can get it to idle real quick. Then we'll go drive it. Okay, well, that only took a year of work, and now we can drive it around without a windshield in it, and no seat belt, and no lights, and yeah, I got a bunch to do. Now, next, the cage, seat belt harness. I got to fix the A-pillar, put the windshield in it, put the rear glass in it. I've got to get an alignment done. I've got to finish all the dash wiring, mount the gauges securely because they're flopping around in there. Got to, did I say alignment? Anyway. Got to go over the whole car front and back, check everything again, and then we can go to the track. Now the the passenger rear tire where I clearanced that, not quite enough. Let's show you what I'm talking about. Real close, real close. It rubbed a little bit when I did my burnout, but it really just rubbed. It didn't hurt anything. So, and like I said, I'm putting Mickey Thompson's on this before I take it to the track. So hopefully I'll have a tad bit more clearance. Hopefully they're a narrower tire, even though it's the same size. Some of them, the actual section width is different. Now, I've got some stuff I'm gonna do to my 73. I've got a cage and a drive shaft safety loop to put in the FrankenNova. And then I've got the 307 block here that I've got to put all this stuff together. Now, as soon as me and Craig get through with this grudge race that is, I don't know, 6 months behind or so, but it's still going to happen as soon as we can. We're trying. Anyway, I'm going to make some pretty good power with the junk heads, not junk, they're 305 HO heads. I ought to make a solid 300 to 325 horsepower with this engine without too much drama. And then when we get through that grudge race, I'm going to try to make some more power with this engine. I'm not sure how yet, but I've got a few ideas. Okay, thanks for checking out the video. Leave me a comment, ask me some questions, like the video please, share the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys in a few days.